Do you have a giant deadleaf mantis? Want to know how to look after them? Watch this video to find out. Hello everyone, welcome back to Spooderpods. I'm David and today we are looking at how to look after a giant deadleaf mantis. Scientific name in the description and also in the little bar. It's much easier than pronouncing it for you guys because some people have made fun of me for it, although a lot of you are very understanding about it. I used to be an English teacher, you'd think I'd get used to it by now. Regardless, this is another one of my favourite species of mantis. I tend to like the brown ones. I think most people find them quite boring, but I really love them, and it's another really easy and charming species to keep, and it's often on display. Our solid snake actually came to us injured. He was missing one of his antennae and missing one of his feet. He's also molted and didn't get them back, so he's a character. But I really like this species. I want to talk to you a little bit about how to look after them. Before I start, I want to talk about some general traits of these guys. They are one of the larger species of mantis, and independently if you get a male or female, they have some amazingly displayed wings when they go through their final molt. Whatever you get, if you get a plain looking one, they're still amazing. They're very active, very voracious when they hunt and eat, and they're also almost constantly on display. I know a lot of people who have them, and most of the time they won't be hiding. They'll either be at the front or being annoying on the door so you can't do their maintenance, and very visible. They also have a very traditional mantis-like head as well, if that's a thing, where you've got those giant bug eyes, the very obvious mouth parts as well, and I really love that about them too. And again, they do look like a giant leaf, because that's their defensive mechanism in the wild. In terms of temperament, they're generally pretty chill. There have been some cases where one will have a nibble on someone or strike by accident, but they won't really have a go at you unless you're constantly hassling them or disturbing them, and that you can even handle them as long as you're being sensible. It's very unlikely they'll hurt you significantly. The worst you expect is a very minor nip. So let's talk about looking after them. Depending on the size of deadleaf mantis and the life stage you get them at, you may want to adjust how you feed them. Generally, even when they're smaller, you can feed them green bottle flies and they will take them greedily. As they get older, larger locusts, mealworms, different types of worms, and also maybe even dubia roaches are all perfectly adequate prey. Try and keep the prey proportional to their size, otherwise they may not want to eat it. And as long as you're doing that, you won't have too many issues. Or again, try not to overfeed or underfeed. Watch their abdomen size. That will give you a good indicator as to their fall. If it's really big, maybe hold off on feeding for a while. If it's slightly smaller, feed them a bit more frequently. Again, as a general rule for most inverts, you want to feed nymphs and middle stage mantises a bit more frequently, and as they get older it can be a little bit less frequent, although again use the abdomen as your guide. With regards to enclosure size, now this is a slightly larger mantis. When they are smaller you can keep them slightly smaller, but I would kind of recommend starting at a 15 by 25 or 15 by 20 at absolute minimum. Our guy is now in an 18 by 25, no 18 by 30 now, goodness, and he's very happy in there and there's plenty of room for him to manoeuvre. So do give them extra space, because if they are crowded you won't get to enjoy them as much. They won't get to enjoy their enclosure as much either. With regards to enrichment, lots of places to climb on, some sort of web or netting on top of the ceilings, they love to hang on there, and ledges because they do enjoy hanging from branches. And you need to make sure they have somewhere they can effectively molt from as well, because they will molt upside down and they need to have space to actually get out of that molt, otherwise they end up on the floor and they have all sorts of problems, which is a very common issue for these guys in undersized enclosures. Other things that are worth kitting out your enclosure with are a decent level of substrate and springtails. These guys will make a bit of mess and throw carcasses down, and because their humidity requirement, which I'll talk about in a moment, is a little bit higher, it's good to have the springtails to keep any mold under control and make sure everything's just staying nice and stable and fresh. You want loads of branches. Again, I went for sort of like an autumn woodland theme with my guy and he loves it. Ledges to hang from, and I also added a feeding bowl as well. It's less for his benefit, because unlike our jumpy spiders who gravitate towards it to eat, these guys don't really care. It's just somewhere to put the food in and they can crawl out and he can hunt it afterwards. With regards to temperature and humidity, we found that the average sort of room temperature works perfectly fine for these guys. This is between 21 and 26 Celsius. Sorry Americans for no conversion there. I'm terrible with Fahrenheit. And also a slightly higher humidity level. We're talking about 65 to 70%, and they seem to do very well. I have seen differing opinions on this, but again, this is based on my personal experience as well as a couple of other people's. You don't want it too high in there, but you do want some decent moisture because it will help them molt. When they get a bit older, you can probably get away with reducing that humidity a little bit, but again, a regular misting at least once or twice a week is going to be a requirement, more frequently when they're younger and when they're going through those initial life stages and molts. Enrichment for these guys, pretty similar to what I described already, just places to hang from, making sure that everything's okay for them in there and that you're observing, loads of ledges, platforms, and all sorts of stuff like that. And also the ability to hunt. Don't always tongue feed, which they will take from greedily. Sometimes encourage them to hunt because that's good enrichment for them too. Once you've got all those staples set up, they're very easy to keep species and they're very rewarding to watch, especially if you do get to see them hunting, because it's quite an interesting sight. You don't need to do too much with them, apart from obviously maintain the humidity, make sure they're well fed, and make sure the enclosure is set up in the correct way. If you have any tips you'd like to share about dead leaves or just your experiences with them, I'd love to hear from you. But in the meantime, take care and see you later.